Welcome back to another episode of Future Important People. We're here with Jacob Blakely. How many people can say they're happy with their job? Not that many.
We're glad to have you here, Jacob.
Thanks, guys. It's a treat to be here. I'm excited to do this. It'll be fun.
So
why don't you explain to us what your tell us what your title is, what your job is, what it entails.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. So my official job title is a support engineer, and that's kind of a broad job title, and I do a lot of different things. I wear a lot of different hats throughout the day, but there's like sort of the engineering side and the support side, and the role is really a hybrid of those two things. So day to day, I can spend a significant amount of time working on just like low-level engineering tasks, writing code, doing software reviews, that kind of stuff. But I also spend a lot of time working with people, and there's a big human element to what I do. So that's a fun sort of contrast to the typical engineering sort of role. So
you're a support engineer. What's the big company?
So the company I work for is called Zapier. They're a startup. They went through the Y Combinator tech feed, sort of the incubator down in the Bay Area.
A lot of people won't know what that is. I don't know what that is.
So it's Y Combinator is it's basically it's a seed group that takes early stage startups and connects them with investors and mentors and people to help them get started. And so it's sort of like an early stage, very early capital investment that springboards cool companies into a really good trajectory to help them get started. So there were three guys out of the Midwest who had this dream for this company, and they moved out to the Bay Area and started it, and they've been really, really successful. So I got hired early last year. I was employee number, I was in the early 40s, probably around number 42. And the company's more than doubled since I've been there. So going really fast.
And you live in Salem, Oregon.
Salem,
You don't
Oregon.
have to go down to San Francisco ever?
I've been down there once for onboarding and training, because they do like to meet everyone in person and kind of get to know you. But yeah, mostly I work remotely from home, and the company's entirely remote based. So we have people all over the world, people in Europe, people in Asia. We've got folks all over the US, Canada. But there's really no central office or anything like that, which is really cool. So they've done a really good job of building a company culture that's all about bringing people together without having to actually physically be in the same location.
And the company is basically expediting simple tasks.
Yeah, so it's an automation company at heart. So we're all about making people more efficient, empowering people to do their job better and use the tools that they already use in a more powerful way and give you more control over your data and over workflows. So we integrate with over 700 different APIs currently. So that's like Google Suite, so Google Docs, Google Sheets, Gmail, that kind of stuff, to like QuickBooks for accounting stuff. We work with a lot of CRMs, so like Salesforce, that kind of stuff. So people who are using all these different tools as part of what they do in their day-to-day work, we let you automate the ways that you use those things and connect them together. It's almost like internet Legos. It's kind of fun. So like one thing happens over here, and then using our platform, you can build a workflow that when that happens, that triggers a workflow that then other things happen down the line based on what that was.
And the people who use you aren't, I asked you earlier, they're not like huge companies. They're day-to-day people like real estate agents or lawyers.
Yeah, so it's a cool concept. Like there's definitely an opportunity, I think, longer term for us to move into more enterprise stuff, and we're thinking about that and what that would look like. But right now, really, we target mostly small to medium-sized businesses, entrepreneurs, solo acts. So that's like people who are like the typical professional stuff. So like lawyers, accountants, real estate agents, that kind of stuff. But we also have like small businesses, people who are running their own business, like have a Shopify store, that kind of stuff. So those are really that's our bread and butter right now.
So rather than paying an assistant or a rookie to come in and do all the boring work, you can just automate it through you guys.
Absolutely, that's the idea, right? So if there's something,
fraction of the cost.
Yeah, if there's something that like let's say you have your Shopify store and you have something or a number of things that you do every time you get an order, which is pretty common, right? Often you like send an email to say, hey, thanks for the order. If you're tracking your inventory in a third-party system, you have some sort of like workflow set up so that when you get an order, you go and you take that thing out of inventory. And often there's like a manual step of printing a shipping label and then going and slapping that on a box. So since we integrate with a bunch of different pieces of that process, you can set up a workflow with us. So when you get an order in Shopify, you automatically send that email to that specific user, and you can customize that a little bit and say like use variables so it's more personal, and then automatically use like Google Print, for example, to print out a shipping label. So at the end of the day, instead of having to go look through all your orders and manually print a bunch of stuff, you just grab a stack of already printed shipping labels off your printer and just go slap them on boxes.
So a long time ago, you helped me make the website for Quiet Village.
Yep.
Just so everyone knows, that's just a brand I started. I did it the wrong way, but I have a bunch of shirts that I wear, and it's my own brand. So, but I did it the wrong way, and it's kind of a dead thing at this point. But that would have been awesome if I was still running a clothing line. That would have been amazing.
Right.
Having all that automated stuff, and I definitely would have paid $20 a month for.
Yeah. So we have some free plans that have certain restrictions on them, but generally our starter plan is $20 a month to really give you the keys to the castle and all our cool features. So. Yeah, I think it's definitely something that it's fun to work on, because I'm a big fan of efficiency and being really intentional with your time, right? And picking things that are meaningful to spend your time on. And so anything we can do to help people who are running their businesses to spend their time on super meaningful things and not have to spend time doing data entry or doing monotonous things, that's a big win. And so it's fun to work on a product that empowers people to do that.
Awesome.
So how did you get to that point? How did you get from, because we knew you way back in college, and you were going.
I've always been really smart.
You were taking business and Japanese or something like that?
Yeah, I ended up with a kind of a smattering of different concentrations. I had a business degree with an entrepreneurship concentration, and then almost a Japanese major. Ended up being a minor at the end of the day, but basically a Japanese major. And I also had some economics in there too, so a whole bunch of stuff, but generally more business focused.
So how did you get
not
from
so much
that
on
point
the tech side
to working in such a tech-heavy?
Yeah, it was definitely an adventure, right? And I think it started out as I worked for a while after college in sort of the general business desk job sort of thing. Worked in an office, did a lot of work with clients, and spent a lot of time in the Microsoft Office suite, sent a lot of emails, talked with clients on the phone, that kind of stuff, did some product management type stuff, just a whole bunch of different typical business things.
After college?
That was my first gig out of college was like that. And after doing that for a while, I realized that I was really excited about the tech side of things, and I was constantly doing things in my job to figure out ways to automate what I was doing, and was figuring out that a lot of that was software related. And so I was like figuring out ways to like write little scripts to automate what I was doing in Excel and that kind of stuff. And
like coding.
Basically, like very early stages coding, essentially. And as I did more of that, I realized I really, really liked that stuff. And I'd always, the phrase I like to use is I knew enough to be dangerous. So like I could mess around with like some HTML and CSS and like dabble in some website stuff and play around with computers. And I'd always built my own hardware for computers and like built desktops and stuff. So I was familiar with it, but wasn't really at all capable of doing what I do now in a professional capacity at all. And so I basically just decided one day that I really wanted to pursue engineering and software development, and didn't really know how to go about doing that. So I just kind of figured it out as I went. Just saved up some money, quit what I was doing before, and went full time on just writing code and building software. And at first, I was thinking more about doing freelance stuff, and I did do a little bit of that for a while. I did do some small client projects and did a lot of work for friends and family, and just also built a lot of stuff for myself. But eventually got to the point where I realized I wanted to work on a really big project, something that was super complex and would really challenge me and help me grow a lot. And I was having a hard time figuring out how I'd get that as a solo act at that point in time, as I was really just starting out and kind of getting my feet wet. And that's when I started putting feelers out for what it would look like to work for someone else again and do software development, and what level I would need to be at to really pull that off.
I brought up the concept 10,000 hours earlier.
Yeah.
It's kind of... So 10,000 hours, you go and do a bunch of different things and build a platform for yourself, so you can then the light turns on and you can do it yourself. So you went back to keep working on your 10,000 hours.
Yeah, I basically just threw a bunch of time at it, and just like I did a lot of reading of other code that other people wrote that I looked up to. I spent a lot of time in the open source community, so I was really active on a site called GitHub, which is sort of a collaborative coding site where people can post code that they've written. Other people can contribute to those projects or open issues to be like, hey, this thing kind of isn't working the way I think it is. So I spent a lot of time going through other popular open source projects and just just donating time to answer questions from people and make pull requests to improve other people's projects, and then also post some of my own stuff that I'd written, and some tools that I'd built, and picked up some momentum through that. And then over time of doing that kind of stuff and then doing some client work, built up a portfolio where I felt like I could really make a case for myself to go to a place like Zapier, where I work now, and be like, hey, I can do this engineering thing, and you should hire me to work for you. And I did that, and they did, and it's been a great fit. So
awesome. So you're pretty
so
much
you reached out to them. They didn't find you.
I was looking online for a place that was hiring remotely. I saw they posted this job that was this really interesting fit, this support engineer thing that I'm doing now, which is kind of like has the engineering side and the deep technical aspect that I really like, but also the people aspect and working with people and solving problems that I really like too.
This is all the back end. This is what people don't see.
Yeah, so I just applied out of the blue and ended up getting an interview, and the rest is history. So, but yeah, awesome. Lonnie, so I'm completely self-taught. I never went to school for this at all.
So it's no formal training necessarily.
No formal training.
But you did graduate and you did get your
right. I went to college. I got a degree and did that whole thing. But the stuff that I studied in school was completely unrelated from what I'm doing now in a technical capacity. Like obviously, some of what I do is like business savvy and working with customers and that kind of stuff.
Part
so
of your foundation.
Sure. But as far as like the actual software development and writing code and all of that, that's stuff that I just picked up doing it.
Just because you were interested in it.
Because I was interested in it and really wanted to do it.
That can be inspiring because, people wonder, well, do I need to go to school if I want to be a computer tech, or, what do I need to do? Mm-hmm. If you invest the time and you learn and you find the right resources,
Was it because you were around the right people, or was it most of it behind a computer Googling stuff?
A lot of it was just time spent behind a computer. Just like I like to say, I wrote a lot of code very poorly at first, and then gradually over time wrote code less and less poorly. From just learning from my mistakes, and like I said, reading a lot of other people's code and seeing how people thought about software development. I did do some online free courses. Like there's a bunch of free material out there for people who are interested in learning to code and want to play around with it to kind of get your feet wet and figure out how things work a little bit.
What are some of those websites?
Codecademy, Treehouse. There's even I think Khan Academy these days may have some stuff. There's a lot of resources out there. Just Google around and you'll find stuff. But to answer Lonnie's question, go back to this idea of it's can be potentially inspiring. I totally agree. I think the word that I like to use is meritocratic. I feel like the software meritocratic, the meritocracy. Okay. So as in, it's not so much your credentials that matter, or even to an extent who you know, but it's what you do. It's what you can show and like what you're capable of.
It's like skill oriented,
right? And I think that there's definitely certain types of jobs in the industry that are more interested in like you have a super solid computer science background, you went to a Ivy League CS program or whatever. Like that's definitely a thing some places, but I think generally in the industry, my experience so far has been that it really what people care about is what you're capable of, what you can do, what you can show that you're.
That's actually how Elon Musk hires. He doesn't care if you graduated high school.
Yeah. It's just what you're capable of. And so I think it's definitely like if you're a listener out there that's interested in maybe pursuing something in the tech industry and you're worried about like, hey, do I need to go back to school and get a degree and this kind of stuff? It's like, well, I mean, think about where you want to work. Do you want to work at a Fortune 500 company and a place that's like super, super big? Then maybe you need to go to school for it. But more of a startup type of feel or work for an agency, that kind of thing, I really don't think that's super required, especially if you do have a strong educational background in another field.
I was going to say that so you do suggest actually getting a degree, being in the field.
I mean, I'm sure it helps. A degree always helps. Sure. I mean, there's definitely people who are just exceptional and don't need it, but
there might be some kids out there who may not get a degree. Do you think they still have hope if they're smart enough? Or
absolutely, that definitely happens, right? But I mean, you just need to evaluate what makes the most sense given your circumstances. I think if you're gonna have to like go majorly into debt to go get a degree, and you're not gonna be able to work during that time, and then so you're like, there's this opportunity cost of time spent going to school and not working on top of taking out a bunch of loans. Like, I think you really have to think about that and make sure that's the right call, because I don't think it always is. Sometimes it is, even then, but sometimes it's not. And I think it's definitely worth thinking about. But with tech in general, I think it's of fields out there that are this sort of like an advanced trade like this. I think it's definitely a good way to go without having to necessarily go back to school for it and get a particular concentration.
I wish I had waited a couple years. I wasn't ready. I just went and basically messed around. And
I think that's a really common story right now, and I think a lot of people have that experience where it's sort of just this understood progression that you graduate high school and you go to college, and there's sort of this societal understanding that if you want to get ahead in life and go be successful, that's what everyone has to do. And I think there's a ton of value in college. I absolutely, I think it's a great experience. I loved going to college, and I made some really good friends in college. I met you guys in college, and I definitely encourage a lot of people to go. But I do think that there's something to be said for knowing why you're going and like really having a trajectory post college, because if you're just going to college to figure stuff out, so many people end up not really finding those answers there, and you're not gaining work experience a lot of the time, or at least not getting valuable work experience.
Out of high school, I feel like there's definitely a pressure.
Yeah,
I
there's
don't know
an
if you
expectation
put, you put it on yourself, or it's your parents, or your peers.
Partially the school, because I remember when I was in high school,
it's the teachers.
There was guest speakers that would come in. They would be like, they do all this math in front of you. Be like, if you don't go to college, you're not even going to make it
be a hobo.
roommates. You're going to be homeless in a week.
Yep.
It's kind of like this. It's pounded into your head when you're in high school, and like
fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Not that there's anything bad about college. I think college can be great. I think people can learn a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's definitely something that I think a lot of people should think more about the decision to go to college than they do. I think a lot of people just see it as a given. It's like, oh, I graduated high school, time to go to college. And it's like, maybe it's worth working for a living, getting some work experience, doing some networking, and kind of getting a feel for what you're excited about.
There's this pressure when you're 18. You think like, man, I've lived life. I gotta hurry up and get this out of the way. But 2 years on the big scale is like, if you take 2 years off,
it's not a big deal at all.
Nothing at all.
No, and sometimes those 2 years can be really important for kind of getting a feel for like, because like when you're graduating high school, you don't really have any perspective for what real life is like. Like you just don't. Most people when they graduate high school, they're so they haven't been exposed to so much of.
You haven't paid taxes.
Right.
You haven't. Lived on your own, paid rent, paid your bills.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, spending a year or two kind of figuring things out a little bit, and then maybe deciding to go off to college, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a really valid trajectory.
It's honestly really smart and probably the best thing for a lot of kids, rather than just jumping into it. Because then after college, you still don't know what it's like to be your own human. Still, living in the dorms or wherever.
Sure, depending. There's a huge variety of experiences in college for sure. But.
So, what's the future of this work field of software engineering, especially for the internet? Like, that's a lot of what you do. It's almost all internet.
Yep,
right?
I'm online 24/7. Yeah, it's hard to say, but I mean, I like to say that for me at least. The internet and software development kind of still feels like the Wild West. Like there's so much we're still figuring out, and so many best practices that are still emerging, and things are still changing really quickly. That for me, that's really exciting and fun to be a part of, because it's not solved, right? There's just so much stuff I learn new things every day. And that's really exciting for me, and it's fun to be a part of. So I don't really, it's hard to speak to on a broader scale where things are going, but I do think in time we're going to see more and more things get web connected. This whole Internet of Things movement is really big right now. And you're going to see more and more aspects of your life have a technological interface and be connected with computers or connected with the internet somehow. And so I think there's just more opportunity for people to have to like be involved in that, right? More jobs, more career paths.
There's more automation going on, right?
More automation, absolutely.
So maybe there's people in certain jobs that maybe they're going to lose their job to this automation, but at the same time, it also opens up opportunities for people to have jobs engineering these programs, these systems.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting conversation. I think there's a
difference between a file clerk and a future engineer.
Right.
Sure.
But you're eliminating someone's job they're not really doing anything. They're just filing stuff versus, that gives an opportunity for someone who is elevating the technological world to have a foothold.
Do you think automation is important, like the most important, like king? Automation is king?
Huh. That's an interesting question. I don't know. I'm not really. I mean, I think it's definitely something that I'm passionate about, and I think is super duper important. And you definitely have some people who have this whole concept of like automation is eating the world, right? And like after 20 or 30 years from now, like a huge percentage of the workforce is going to have their job automated away. And I don't know exactly where I sit on that spectrum. I definitely think there's going to be some change, and I think we're going to have to spend some time as a society and as a culture thinking about what that looks like, and like how careers work and that kind of stuff. But
I think it is. People who are penny pinchers and watch every cent that goes out still pay for like Uber because it saves time and everything.
Yeah.
It's more like cutting out the
automated.
middleman.
Or
It's like direct to customer.
call in or go on their app for Domino's. Domino's comes and
Right. Instead of having to call in and have
it's
someone answer
easier.
the phone.
It's automated.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge
It's definitely
swing that's happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of momentum behind it. And I think that you're just going to find more and more of that moving forward. Definitely.
So, your background is, are you doing anything with the Japanese thing?
I'm not currently. So I think for me, the Japanese thing, I was never. So I studied in college quite a bit, and I especially took a lot of classes around Japanese culture and history and stuff like that. And for me, the major value I extracted from that, and something I still think about a lot and I'm really interested in, is not so much particularly like Japanese language or translation, which is what a lot of people end up using that kind of stuff for, but more thinking about the globalization of culture. And so one of the things that I was most interested in about the parts of Japanese culture that I studied is this whole idea of post-war, post-World War II, that is, Japan kind of reinvented itself as this cultural superpower. So instead of it being like necessarily an economic superpower or military superpower, which it did there were a bunch of positive economic externalities from it, but really Japan exported their culture. This idea of this like super fun, you had all these different, like in the 90s especially was the first really big wave of like Japanese shows, Japanese games, Pokemon, exactly, yeah. I think the first one came out in 96, which seems so long ago now, but and
the internet had everything to do with that too.
Exactly, right. And if you carry that out to its current end, like a big part of why that was such a big deal and so interesting and so powerful is this idea of participatory culture, is a word that gets thrown around a lot in academic circles. So you had people who were a fan of something, and in being a fan and establishing a fandom, they made it their own and they participated in it. So you had like remixes and fanfics and like people making reviews and posting them to YouTube and all these different ways that people interacted with media that was empowered by how easy it is now to share this stuff over the internet that wasn't even a thing before, right? And so now, taking that up to its current sort of 2017 era, you have this whole new market, this whole new emergence in the economy of all these different niches of
and all the
really interesting
all the
pieces
channels
of
and
culture.
everything are scrambling to figure out how to adapt.
Where you have all these little interesting peaks where like someone can be a YouTube star for like Minecraft, and a significant portion of the
PewDiePie.
Sure, yeah, he's not necessarily Minecraft.
That's how he started, I think.
Yeah, perhaps. Where like a huge percentage of the population has no idea who that is, but within a certain subgroup, they're really important.
Like 49 million people do.
they're like really important, and so there's a business around it. There's this whole economic movement of you can be an entrepreneur creating content and distributing it over the internet for a specific niche that people are a fan of. So that's something that sort of, for me, is really interesting and I think a lot about, and is a direct offshoot of a lot of the studies I did for cultural studies in Japan.
So even on a smaller scale, like, take a podcast or a YouTube channel or something, and they have like 1,000 subscribers or 1,000 loyal fans, and they don't get a lot of views, but it doesn't take that much.
It really doesn't.
To have, not to get rich. I mean, PewDiePie is rich. Everyone knows that.
Sure.
But like, there's other people that only have so many followers, and they have just enough.
You have a core fan base.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you put out a campaign for a shirt. 1,000 people buy a $20 shirt. That's good money.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
totally. That's the idea. It's
yeah.
another way of expressing it is this idea of the long tail. So this guy named Chris Anderson, who was an editor for Wired magazine, wrote this really interesting book. I think it was in the early 2000s, called Long Tail Economics. And the idea was that for much of contemporary culture, we've had a culture of media that's dominated by hits. So you have like if you're like running a radio program or a radio channel station, you want to like a lot of your revenue is coming from ads that you're selling, right? So what you're trying to maximize is getting the most possible amount of people to listen to your radio station so that you can charge the most for ads. And it was like that for TV. It was like that for music. It was like that for all these different types of media. But the internet really flipped that on its head entirely, and it made it so the channels of distribution are completely open. And
NBC, ABC, everything is dying.
Yeah, and even like the mainstream music labels, like all these different types of media
There's
now.
more independent
it's
artists
so
than
much
ever.
Easier for individuals to go out and produce content and distribute it to fans. And so now, if you look at the valuation curve of over a certain type of medium, where the value is, previously it was in the peak on like the if you look at a sloped curve, there was the few hits that captured the most value. And now it's the opposite of that. It's the long tail of all these different niches that have their little fan groups in them. And that's really where the bulk of the value is. So it's this huge multiplicity of culture that I think is super great.
And then there's like viral videos.
Yep.
There's the dark end, like people who should not be famous.
Yeah, take it a little bit too
Have
far.
you heard of Cash Me Outside? Cash Me Outside Girl?
I don't think I've heard of that.
Thank God. I appreciate you not knowing about
I
that.
think you're the only one.
Really? You don't know about that either? Dude.
Well, I'll make sure to not check it out
Don't
later.
check it out. She got in like a fight. Oh, it was on Jerry Springer or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
And she's like a 13-year-old white trash from Alabama who just like called out the crowd. Yeah, Cash Me Outside. How about that? And there's like remixes and stuff. Dude, she's making like, I think it was like $100,000 a month on Instagram now.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how that
And she
works,
should not be.
Sure, but I mean, there's always been this whole like idea of celebrity culture, right? But yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting cultural shift if you look at how we consume media and how we share media and how people can make money now in various industries in media. And so
It can happen overnight.
Yep.
Something like that.
So that's something that was definitely, for me, I thought was always really interesting and is part of where I wanted to be in an industry that was connected to the internet and sort of be in the thick of that and sort of have a finger on the pulse of how that all works.
We live in a cool time.
Yeah.
It is like the Wild West kind of. Imagine exploiting YouTube like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
The people who did that are like
The crazy
set.
thing is YouTube's only been around for like 10 years, right? I mean, like, I think it launched in
like
2006.
2006.
I want to say. Yeah. So
You're right.
11 years ago. And like, think about what it was like before YouTube, right? Isn't that crazy? Like, you want to figure out how to do something. You can't just like go YouTube a tutorial for like how to patch the drywall or something. Right?
I feel like
Anything random
we
like that.
know so much more than people like
It's
30
so
years ago.
much easier to
Our
share
age.
information.
It's integration of artificial intelligence, but people don't see it that way.
What, the
because
phone
it's-
in your hand?
Well, it's just it's done in such a nice way that it's like, oh, we're not integrated. Well, your phone knows what you're doing. It knows where you're going.
Yep.
It knows what you like to buy. It's like, hey, you were looking at some beef jerky the other day. You want to buy some beef jerky?
It's oh my God, it's crazy. So me and Lonnie, we got into hookah. We were smoking hookah a lot.
Yeah.
And we stopped because we tried to go on a run. It was horrific.
Yeah.
We went to the store. It was one of the last times before we threw the hookah away.
Yeah.
Went to the store, bought shisha and coals, and with his card, sat down, and we had our Chromecast where you can wirelessly cast your whatever video you're watching. The first ad that popped up, never seen it in our lives. Either of us haven't seen it since then. But it was connected to his phone and his card.
Yep.
It was "Don't smoke hookah."
Yep.
And we were sitting there setting it up. We were like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, no, it's definitely there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people aren't really aware of how intelligently targeted a lot of the ad stuff is these days. It's pretty crazy.
I can't remember what the Facebook data thing is called, but you can
Metadata? Is that what you're talking about?
something like that. But you can go in and let's say you're a car dealer and you're trying to grow. You can go in and pay for Facebook ads and target specifically 20 to
Demographics.
There's some weird name for it. I forgot what it was. Gary Vaynerchuk is like a huge entrepreneur, public speaker.
The wine guy.
The wine library guy.
Yeah, yep.
He's one of the guys who exploited YouTube like right off the bat.
Yep.
And yeah, he took like a $3 million business and turned it into a $56 million business.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, the internet's definitely a huge multiplying factor like that. It's definitely it empowers people to reach a much larger audience than they were able to before.
Dude, I work for a company right now where their advertising is still in the newspaper, and it's driving me crazy. And I've had like almost yelling matches with the GM about like, yeah, okay, we should be on Facebook. At least update your Facebook page. Yep. And he just can't believe it. Yeah, no, I used to pay. I paid a company, and we went from like 1 follower to 60 followers, and it didn't. Dude, it's just insane. He's wrong.
It's hard working with folks who are used to pre-internet era marketing. It was really I can't remember who it was. I wanted to say it was like one of the big soda execs. It was probably like Pepsi or Coke. Said that for a long time marketing felt like just throwing money into a black hole, because you didn't really know, like, everyone knows you had to market, right? I mean, you have to market your product. But if you look at what was available pre-internet era, it's like, okay, you take out a newspaper ad, you take out magazine ads, you take out radio ads, you take out TV commercials, maybe if you're big enough.
There's your whole budget.
But the thing is like, how do you know that those ad spend dollars were successful?
Yeah,
you don't have any.
You can't
data.
track it.
You don't have
no tracking on that.
You know that like X amount of people probably saw your commercial that aired at a certain time, because you have like Nielsen ratings or whatever about how many people were watching a TV show.
And all those work. They can work, but where everyone's face is in their phone. Yeah. So and then the 40, 50-year-olds, everyone has Facebook.
Yep.
That age now. They're so much slower. They're scrolling through and looking at every last thing. Mm-hmm. That's who it really gets.
Yeah, and so but like the thing is before you had no real way to connect an ad view to a sale. It was so much harder to do that advanced data analytics.
Now it's direct and automated, like what
right now it's all about that. Like modern contemporary advertising and marketing is all about analytics and looking at the numbers and saying, okay, so this person viewed this ad, and we can track that, and then we can look at like, did they make a purchase? Did they directly navigate? Did they click on this ad? And you can really see how your ad spend dollars are being successful or not successful.
If you have a radio ad or a billboard or whatever, and you do it that way, the best you can do is, hey, how'd you hear about us? And hope for an honest answer on exactly how they came in.
Right. Yeah. So it's like after the fact instead of just like having that data built in automatically.
And how many people are going to actually tell you? I don't know. Even if you're not trying to lie, you can be like, oh, heard of you from a friend, but that doesn't help at all.
Yeah. So data is really important, and it's something that is true in a lot of industries. There's a lot of different fields now that, because of technology being more and more involved in the process, they have much better data now to make more informed decisions about different business procedures and how to spend their money.
So you're basically, what's your role in the company? What do you call yourself?
So I'm a support engineer. So I'm basically on 2 different teams at once. We have a support team, which are basically just work directly with customers. When people have issues, they write in and we help them out. And then, of course, the engineering team, building the core product, adding new features, fixing bugs, that kind of stuff. And so I'm somewhere in the middle, where I spend time working with customers on some of the advanced technical issues. When someone writes in and they have something that's like an API is misbehaving, they're not sure why, or something's not working, and it's kind of, there's a technical issue. I spend a lot of time diving into that kind of stuff and kind of figuring out exactly what calls our software is making to that other third party and what their response is, and looking at the actual data, digging through logs, that kind of stuff. And then translating that back to just basic English for a person on the other end. Be like, hey, so this is...
Dude, for me, I have no idea with that website you built for me. No idea what you did. Yeah. Still. Yep. And I was there for the whole process pretty much.
Yeah, and that's totally fine, right? And like that's part of the thing, is being able to communicate things in a way that people can understand and relate to, and feel like they understand just enough to like really be comfortable with things, but not have to understand all the complex technical underlying pieces. And so I spend time doing that. And then on the other side, I do spend time in our core product, like fixing bugs and shipping new features sometimes. But a lot of what I do is actually building internal tooling. So we have a whole suite of internal tools that we've built that our employees use to do their job, and I spend a lot of time working on that kind of stuff, which is really fun because I get to ship stuff pretty quickly, and I have a very targeted audience of the people, my coworkers, the people I work with. So I build software for them to let them do their job better.
I really feel like that there's a huge future as long as the company keeps growing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
And it's
that's where the future is.
The internet's going to keep growing. So there's no stopping it. That's going to be available. One company is going to take it or another.
Yep. Yeah, the internet's not going anywhere.
Your company, what's the company called?
It's called Zapier.
Zapier. Mm-hmm. It seems like it's kind of ahead of the curve, or in the curve. It's not. It's definitely not behind.
I definitely feel like it's a very forward-thinking idea, and it's fun to be a part of.
Are there other companies doing that? Probably.
There are a couple. There's definitely it's becoming more of an industry now. But we were one of the first players and are the biggest player in the industry right now.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So what would be a you're doing this now and it's fulfilling, which is how many people can say that? That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about your future?
What about the future?
If there's a cool thing you see yourself, like you dream of being a part of something, is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I think one thing that I definitely want to pursue at some point soon, and this is more something I'll start dabbling with in my free time, and I don't at all expect it to replace my career anytime soon, if at all, is game development, actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm really interested in game dev and game dev theory and
what's game dev?
Development, building, like writing software, making video games, essentially. So I've always been a pretty big fan of games, and especially like more of the cerebral aspect of thinking about like why certain games are fun, and how like different like social aspects of games work, of like player interaction and how people interact with games.
So you said cerebral aspect. Is that like aesthetics? Like what you don't really know why you like it. It just looks good, or
maybe more. So let me cash it in these terms. I think Lonnie will be more familiar with this. Maybe appreciate this more. But there was this study that a guy did a while back. I can't remember his name. I feel bad, but it was called the Daedalus Project, where he was a longtime MMO player. MMOs are a certain genre of game. That's
what's it stand for again?
Massively multiplayer online. So it's
like
a virtual
WoW,
community. Yeah, WoW is sort of the greatest example of it's been the most successful. And what this guy found is that different types of people enjoy that genre for very different reasons. And he kind of put those into different categories. So there were some people who were really interested in completionism. So they wanted to go see everything. They wanted to explore the game and kind of experience all there was to experience. Or maybe like if there's a ton of different items, they wanted to collect all the items and build a collection. There were some people who were interested purely in the social aspect. The fun part for them was meeting other people, or maybe like playing out a role.
Trolling.
Or trolling, like Lonnie, yeah.
What?
No, never. Lonnie would never do that.
No.
And then there were some players who were very competitive, right? They wanted to go beat other players, or they wanted to go like figure out how to optimize things and like fine tune a strategy to go like be competitive about it. And then there were some people who wanted to go be teachers. They wanted to learn about the game and then like help other new players learn more about the game.
Like on Twitch.
Yeah. And so there's all these different ways where there's this, it's the same game, right? At the end of the day, it's this big sandbox that everyone's in the same experience, but the things that people are doing inside the game and the way that they experience it and the way that they extract enjoyment from it is radically different.
So there's just thousands of businesses just being created every single day, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like whether it's entertainment, teaching, or
video games, it's a huge market, and as like
what's that?
VR gets closer and closer to being like, something that people use every day. Because like Oculus Rift, I don't know where it's at. I haven't looked at it recently, but I know after Facebook bought it, I didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
But that type of technology is really going to start becoming the focal point of a lot of game development. Wouldn't you agree?
I think so too. Yeah, I think VR has a ton of potential. I think it's still a ways away from really getting mainstream adoption and having a whole bunch of really cool software written for it, but it's definitely in the early stages, and I think there's already some really cool stuff there, and it's definitely in the next decade or so it's gonna be really fun to see where the industry goes.
What's that yearly video game event called? E3. Yeah. So I a while ago I looked up how much profit there is in it, and video games is huge. I want to see it on a pie.
Yeah,
I want to see how much it takes up, because it's huge.
The industry's exploded for sure. And so, so getting back to like my particular interest in it, I definitely I spend a lot of time thinking about, and I'm interested in this idea of like different types of enjoyment and ways that people interact with games and the different like methods of play. So that sort of thing's really interesting. And so for me, like this idea of building a game is really entertaining and exciting, because I have the software chops now where I could go in and actually like build a game engine and build a game world.
Wow.
And make a game. And so I think that's, as far as like talking about future endeavors and things I would like to do, and like to use what I know now and use my current skills and build on, that's definitely one thing that I thought would be really cool and would like to start doing is spending some time working on a game project, building a game.
How big of a team do you think you would need to build a game? Like a good game? 100?
So there have been some really fantastic games written by a team of one.
Wow.
Yeah, there's
Like what? Do you know?
Cave Story is one of my favorite examples. There's this game called Cave Story that there was a Japanese guy who, this was I want to say in like the early to mid 2000s. It's an homage to the Metroidvania genre. So there was this game called Super Metroid that was released for the Super Nintendo in the 90s that has this huge cult following. It's really fun. And he loved that game. And so he built this game called Cave Story kind of as an homage to this game from his childhood that he loved. And he spent multiple years doing it. He was working full time. I believe it was just a salaryman in Japan, doing just desktop stuff, I think, if I remember correctly. And in his nights and weekends, he spent his time like learning how to code, learning how to do pixel art, learning stuff about music development. And he built this entire game and did all the coding, all the art, all the sound, all himself. And released it for PC, and it's gone on to get ported to a number of different systems now. It's on Steam. I think there's like a Nintendo DS version of it, and it's on a couple of the web stores. So it's definitely, and there's.
So you can't be a team of one. I guarantee he didn't have a social life.
I mean, I think it definitely like ate up a lot of his time, but I don't think he regrets that. I think he built something super cool and is really proud of it.
There's something to be said.
Yeah.
Being a team of one, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's definitely doable, but at the same time, you have stuff on the other end of the spectrum that's like has hundreds of people working on it, and I don't think I'd want. That's not the type of game development I would be excited about. I think for me, it's much more like the small team thing, where if I did get more serious about it, I'd probably look at maybe bringing on an artist and maybe a sound guy, because those are not my strengths. I'm super interested in both of those
Two
things.
people, Tom Peters and Blake Gaddis.
There you go. Yeah. Built-in team.
Yeah.
Done. But yes, pretty small.
Definitely. So doing something video game related, it sounds like you can go any direction with that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely purely creative, really open-ended.
That's why it's exciting, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, video games are actually hitting even further markets. Like, have you ever heard of Ready Player One?
Yep.
Or read it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good book, and it's just about somebody who's in it's a fiction book, but it's about someone that's in like this video game world where the world revolves around this one video game.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah. Oh, yeah. Anybody who wants to get into the thing, what do you call it? The market that you're in. What do you suggest? Do you suggest go to school? Obviously, you can't. You don't have to.
I mean, I think
still make it.
So anyone who's interested in getting into engineering and doesn't really know where to start, I would definitely look into some of the online courses out there. So Google around and jump on something like Codecademy or Team Treehouse, stuff like that, and just take some online courses. It's super low pressure. A lot of it's free to start out with, and just kind of like play around with it and see if you get excited about that kind of stuff. That's a great place to start, where it's not really a big commitment, right? And once you've done that for a while and you're starting to get more serious about it, I definitely would recommend looking for ways to get involved with other people who are already established in the industry. So like a mentor would be awesome if you can find someone or you know someone already maybe who's in the industry and would be willing to spend some time meeting with you, working with you, talking through some stuff. That's a great way to level up really fast.
Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you.
There's meetups often, so like a lot, especially bigger metropolitan areas like Portland, have a lot of meetups going on throughout the week where people who are interested in certain types of development, like Python or web development or security, that kind of stuff, they'll get together every so often. So go to those, like seek out those sorts of opportunities. And another thing that's becoming more popular now is this idea of coding boot camps. So you basically, it's almost like summer camp, right? But it's like you spend a couple months, or sometimes there are a few weeks, the timeline varies a lot, where you go to this super intense workshop that's multiple weeks long, where you just learn from scratch, and they have fantastic teachers often that kind of get you through those early phases of really, I don't know what I'm doing, help me out, to get to the point where you're a little bit more sufficient. And then from there, sometimes people can jump into a career right away after that. Some people are already at that point, and some companies do hire people out of those right away, and other people take more time to like learn more and progress more before they're really ready.
And other people go work at the gas station, just like anything.
Yep.
It's kind of like a boot camp for engineering for software.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely a thing.
So is there anything you want to plug at the end of this thing?
I think I'm good.
You're not working on specifically doing.
Oh, so as far as like what to focus on,
Yeah.
I think so. For me, obviously, I'm a little bit biased. I've been talking a lot about the internet. I think the internet's super cool, and I don't think it's going anywhere. So, and I think a lot of people who are interested in software development are probably in the same boat. A lot of the reason they're excited about it is because of the internet. And
Dude,
because
getting involved in a tech company out of San Francisco is like gold right now.
Yeah. So I think the types of things to focus on that I guess I would recommend looking into is web tech. So look at the web stack, look at how web servers work, look at how the internet works, find out sort of the underlying tech of like, okay, so there's this website and like, how does it actually work? What's going on behind the scenes?
Reverse engineering.
Reverse engineering, sure. Often lots of JavaScript. JS is sort of the language of the internet for good or ill. There's a lot of great things about it. There's a lot of not so great things about it, but it's, at least for now, it's here to stay. So learn JS probably. And then often a dedicated server-side language is probably a good way to go too. Node.js to an extent is good for that, but something like Python or Ruby is often a good thing to learn in addition if you're interested in the net stack.
What are those? Python and Ruby?
They're different programming languages.
Okay. Jeez. Oh man.
Layers of complexity for sure.
Yeah. Not my world, but definitely an awesome
Give
world
it
to be
20
in.
years and JavaScript's going to be like something they're teaching kids in 3rd grade or something.
Yeah, no, I can
You don't
definitely
know
see that.
You have to know JavaScript, otherwise it's going to be the cursive of the next generation.
You don't know how to code a website? You're out. All right. But
All right, cool. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, Jacob. We really appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was a
a
great
lot
time.
of fun. Really good to see you.
Yeah, for sure.